Alright, as usual, things have been going too well with my audio, so as punishment, my audio failed again for this video, so you shall just have my camera's audio. I apologize in advance for anyone that annoys.
Hello, it's me, your favorite indie author, Julian Greystoke, although right now, I am also your favorite book reviewer, Julian Greystoke. What are the odds that they're the same person? Today we're going to be looking at a book that I really wanted to love. This was a book that had so many ideas and concepts that it kept bringing up that I was like, yes, I love this. And then it always zigged when it should have zagged, at least in my opinion. Now, this is again just my opinion, so what I wish would have happened in the book isn't necessarily what everybody would have wanted to happen in the book, but like, it just felt like this book was so close to being a book that I would have loved, and then every time it came right up to the precipice, but rather than jumping over into the sea of books that Julian loves, it just backed off again. By the way, the book is called Starling House. Let me read you the blurb over on Goodreads. The blurb goeth thusly. Eden, Kentucky is just another dying bad luck town, known only for the legend of E. Starling, a reclusive 19th century author and illustrator who wrote The Underland and disappeared. Before she vanished, Starling House appeared, but everyone agrees that it's best to let the uncanny house and its last lonely heir, Arthur Starling, go to rot. Opal knows better than to mess with haunted houses or brooding men, but an unexpected job offer might be the chance to get her brother out of Eden. Too quickly, though, Starling House starts to feel dangerously like something she's never had. A home. As sinister forces converge on the Starling House, Opal and Arthur are going to have to make a dire choice and dig up buried secrets of the past and confront their own fears, or let Eden be taken over by literal nightmares. If Opal wants a home, she'll have to fight for it. Okay, so haunted house story, I'm on board. I would not call this a horror, I would definitely call it more of a supernatural thriller, because the horror elements are really not there. For one thing, the haunted house, actually not that hostile. Honestly, it is what is below the house that is the problem. And this book has a lot of elements, and that is one of the issues that are going on with it, in my opinion. It's not streamlined, it has too many things, too many disparate things going on that are all trying to connect at the end, and for me it was a fail. So we have the haunted house, which is a character in and of itself. It's a little bit like the casita from Encanto. It has its own personality, it reacts, it has thoughts and feelings basically. However, if you're hoping for a lot of the house as a character in the book, you're gonna be disappointed. We do spend some time there and get some reactions from the house, but for the most part, the house is a very side character, which is one of the many things that disappointed me. And possibly as I go through talking about this book, it'll just be like, here's an element, and here's why I was disappointed by it. So that's the first one. Cool haunted house that isn't hostile, but actually not really in the story all that much. They should have spent more time in the house, honestly. We spend the majority of our time with our main girl, Opal, who is that scrappy girl archetype, and I didn't love Opal as a character. She had a flat arc, so she doesn't really change throughout the course of the story. She has a mission, and she pretty much sticks to it no matter what. The archetype that she is the elder sister who is raising her younger brother after their parents died in a car accident. Well, their mother. They don't actually know where they have two different fathers, and they don't know where their fathers are. The fathers don't matter. Their mother died in a car accident, and so Opal has been raising her younger brother since she was a teenager. Opal is now almost 30. She's a grown-ass woman at this point, but unfortunately, she reads a lot like a teen, and I kept forgetting that she wasn't one. Same for her love interest, who we'll talk about in a minute. But Opal just feels like somehow she's so mature because, she's been raising her brother all this time, and also one of the most immature people. And maybe that's realistic for somebody who had to become a parent at a very young age, but her voice was so teenagery. Just kept forgetting that she wasn't actually still just 19 or something like that. She's in her late 20s. But Opal has one mission and one mission only: to earn enough money to get her little brother to go to the college of his dreams. He likes to make movies, another element that I thought was going somewhere and wasn't really. We had this whole thing with her brother I'll talk about, but he loves to make film, and so she's like, I want to send him to the film school of his dreams. So she's been saving up money at her crappy Tractor Supply job, which I thought was hilarious. hilarious because like I live in Wisconsin and we have a Tractor Supply. That's where I get my horse grain most of the time. She's working at this shitty job where her manager is awful, of course, and she just like hates it. But she has to for her brother. But then one day she stumbles into getting a different job, that of being a housekeeper for Starling house, the big, creepy, weird, haunted house. I honestly forget why she initially goes there, but she goes to the house for some reason to investigate. She's always been having dreams about this house, but something finally pushes her to go there to investigate, and she meets Arthur, the caretaker, who is Sullen Man, and that's all he's got. And he's like, he feels compelled to offer her a housekeeping job just because magic basically is like pushing them together, because like he doesn't want her around, she doesn't really want to be there, and yet at the same time both of them are being compelled by plot forces to want to come together in the house. And so she starts working as a housekeeper. He pays her ridiculously well because he's independently wealthy for reasons. There's so many things, but he pays her super well, so she's able to quit her crappy Tractor Supply job, and now she's working as a housekeeper in this haunted house. Again, we don't actually spend enough time in this house, even though she spends like at least the first half of the book in this housekeeping job. The house likes her a lot because the house picks its caretakers. Being a caretaker is not inherited. There is no family name of Starling. The house chooses new caretakers and they take on the last name of Starling and then have access to resources that are laid aside by the previous Starlings. How they're having all this money feels very tenuous to me. But there's money. There's money. It's been set aside for them to keep the house, and then the caretakers protect the house from outside and inside forces. All right, but let's stick with Opal. Opal is just not, like, she seems like she could be such an interesting character, and she's not for me. She's very stagnant, she's very flat. She is that sort of snarky, plucky girl archetype who's just a little bit too sassy and a little bit too disconnected from her own emotions for me personally. And like I said, she is a flat arc, which isn't a problem. I don't mind a flat arc. I'm not one of those people who insists that every single character has to grow into something else by the end of the book. But because I didn't really like who Opal was at the beginning, for her to basically be the same person at the end, I was like, ugh, okay, well, I just kind of didn't like her all the way through. Let's talk about Arthur. He is the current caretaker. His parents were caretakers, but that didn't necessarily mean that he would be one. He actually left for a while and then came back when his parents died, and the house accepted him as the new caretaker. The caretaker's job is to keep the monsters that live under the house from coming up and destroying everything. So he periodically has to fight monsters. He doesn't get along with the house all the time. He's a little bit, well, he's a lot of bit resentful of it and of being the caretaker. He doesn't really want that job, but he has it. So he has a sword and a bad attitude. And basically he's curmudgeonly. And then later he falls in love with Opal, and the romance is again one of the things that really disappointed me. I didn't ship these two. They had no chemistry. I would have believed you if you told me that they like went their separate ways in the end and didn't see each other again. Like, it feels so forced that they are starting to feel romantically for each other. He technically falls first, and we do get some of his point of view, though not as much as Opal. But you just, like, why? Why does he like her? And even more, why does she like him? Just at a certain point, she just decides that she's into him. There's no like preamble for it, there's no growing attraction. It's just all of a sudden she's like, yeah, I like him now. I want to smooch with him, and I get mad at him anytime that he almost smooches me but then doesn't. Like, Opal gets unreasonably pissed off that this boy that she didn't like 10 minutes ago isn't falling head over heels for her now that she's found out he likes her. Like, calm down. Opal is very confusing with how she feels about romance, because we find out that she is, in general, pretty aromantic from the sound of it. She has casual sex, but doesn't ever fall in love with anybody. But then when she does figure out that this guy likes her, she's like, oh, okay, we should just be a couple now. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You never wanted to be a couple with anybody before. What about this guy? We don't know what it is about this guy. There's nothing in her head. We're in her head. We're in her first person point of view, and I have no idea why she likes him. I guess it's sort of a, well, he'll do kind of a vibe, but they're supposed to have this like huge, beautiful romance, and I'm like, not seeing it, and I feel like it's so shoehorned in. Like, well, we have a guy character and we have a girl character. I guess they have to smooch at some point, and I think they have sex at some point, and there's negative chemistry between these characters. There are also a bunch of side characters, including Opal's brother, who, again, this feels like something that was a missed opportunity. Opal has a really close relationship with her brother, who is a senior, I believe, in high school at this point, and they live together in this motel where they've always lived since their mother was alive. Their mother has some kind of blackmail going on with the woman who owns the hotel to allow them to continue to rent there for whatever Opal can afford, and so they do. And so she and her brother live in this motel. Neither of them consider it home. One of Opal's themes is she's seeking a home, a real home. And supposedly she finds it in, what's his name? Arthur, but I don't believe that for one tiny little smidgen of a second. Opal's brother, he wants to be a character. He wants to be in the main plot, and the plot keeps telling him to bugger off. He keeps coming, and we see their relationship, and I buy her relationship with him a lot more. Their brother-sister dynamic is really cool. It's so nice to see a brother and sister dynamic where the sister raised the brother and he doesn't hate or resent her. Like, they have their disagreements and they have their issues, but ultimately he loves her, you know, and there's the moment where he says, I realize that when I think of mom, I can't picture our mother, I picture you. Like, it's really a sweet, sweet relationship. And they are both connected to the Starling house. And at one point he figures out what she is up against with, like, the monsters and everything happening at the Starling house, and he lets her just, like, shunt him aside and not help. In my opinion, the ending should have been her brother, and Arthur all going up against whatever was happening at the Starling house, instead of her brother keep cropping up as a character to have a relationship, but then ultimately it doesn't matter because at the end she just tells him, go away, I'm dealing with this, and he just does. And that's it. And I get her wanting to protect her brother, but I feel like their relationship was built up in such a way that he should have been helping her at the end. And he wasn't. He wasn't in the entire climax of the story. Also, there is the woman who owns the motel who is very grumpy and crotchety, but also you find out later that she's a lesbian and she is together with the librarian who's also kind of a side character. And they were cute. I liked them. I figured out that they were dating pretty early on. I'm like, oh, we got some girlfriends on our hands, but eventually they do reveal that yes, we are a couple. They come out of the closet together. It's cute. A little bit pointless, but cute. It does kind of allow Opal to have her two lesbian moms, because these two women, she realizes, have been taking care of her as she's been growing up, taking care of her brother. They've been taking care of her. Even no matter how curmudgeon-y they are, they have been. And finally, the last character that I'll talk about is like the main villain, who is this evil corporate lady who shows up and she wants information about Starling House, and so she pays Opal to be a double agent, basically. So Opal is cleaning Starling House, working for the house, and also at the same time she is taking pictures inside the house and sending back information to evil corporate lady. Evil corporate lady wants to get her hands on the house because she thinks that there is something valuable underneath the house, which she's wrong about, because there's another element that I really wanted to be cool and was like, missed the mark again, just like so close to being on the mark, and then it missed it for me. And that is the Underland. So you remember at the beginning of that blurb where we talked about this reclusive author who wrote the quote-unquote Underland series and then disappeared. The Underland series is Opal's like favorite childhood book series, and it is apparently incredibly creepy. So it's like Alice in Wonderland, but make it horror. The illustrations are basically described as looking a lot like the illustrations in those old scary stories to tell in the dark books, like deeply unsettling, scarring for little children, and yet the series is incredibly popular. And Opal loves it. It's one of her most formative like book series, which is fair because she ends up being connected to Starling House. The author of those books was from the Old South, you know, and I'm talking Old South, you know, back when people were slaves. But she was a little young, waifish, underage girl who was married off to, I think, her uncle, something horrifying like that, and, you know, or a cousin or something. She's horrifyingly abused by her husband, but then she finds an escape via these underground tunnels into the Underland, where she encounters all kinds of creatures and she writes books about it. And again, cool element, but like the way that the book handled it felt so lackluster, especially because with Arthur being like this keeper of the house who's supposed to keep the monsters from coming up. There's a door in the house that he can't unlock, but monsters come through the door and he has to kill the monsters. They come from the Underland. The house is built on top of the Underland, all right? So I'm like, okay, cool. It takes like halfway through the book to even get us to a point where we're seeing a monster for the first time. So we get halfway through the book and we finally get to see a monster. Arthur's gonna fight it. Opal is like, what's that? Oh no! And Arthur's getting his ass kicked because Arthur actually kind of sucks at fighting. We finally see the monster. I'm like, good, finally we're getting to the point where Arthur and Opal are gonna have to team up to fight the monsters that are trying to take over the house and the town. Except for no, Opal runs away and we don't see another monster again for a while because like Opal has this thing where she keeps buggering off and Arthur has this thing where he keeps telling her to leave and she keeps listening to him. And so this team up that I wanted never happens. Never, not even in the climax of the book, this team up doesn't happen. And I was so frustrated because one of the things I love to see with romantic couples is like, how are they as a team? Let me see them working together, bouncing off each other. Oh, let's be great. Let's be a great duo. Nope, they gotta work separately, even in the climax. That was honestly one of my biggest letdowns for this book as a whole, is that we kept feeling like we were setting up for them to go in as a team, and then they didn't. It felt like we were setting up for the brother to become part of the team, and then he didn't. It felt like we were setting up for at least Opal and Arthur to become a team, and then they didn't. It was just so disappointing that we kept bringing these characters together, only for them to have to go separate again. I don't know why. I have a theory it may have been connected to this author's desire to keep Opal as a very independent woman. And so teaming her up meant that Opal wasn't like solving problems on her own. She's a problem solver. She can get it done. Opal's got this. And it's like, well, it doesn't actually detract from Opal's character to let her like join a team. She could even lead the team if you wanted her to. I almost thought that was the direction we were going because Arthur's not actually that good at his job. So I was like, okay, cool. Opal, take over, handle it. But no, we're not doing that. Opal does handle it at the end alone. And it's just like, why do you keep teasing me with a team up? And then Opal keeps having to run away and like go do stuff in the town for pages and pages that I don't care about, and then eventually come back to the house and maybe do something to do with monsters for like 10 minutes, and then she's out again. This book was way too focused on Opal doing stuff around town and not nearly enough on the cool house with the haunted underground. We find out more about the history of the house and how it's connected to slavery. Like the Underland was apparently first discovered by a man fleeing slavery, but then he told the poor wayfish little white girl where it was so she could flee her horrible marriage, and so she did that, and then she built a house on top of it after her husband mysteriously died and left her all of his money. And then she wrote about Underland, and then she also died. And it turns out at the very end, we're just gonna go ahead and skip to the end, Opal has to leave friggin' Arthur fighting monsters while she goes like deep into the Underland herself, handling her fear that she totally has of drowning. Like her one main fear is of drowning through this whole book because her mother died when their car went off the road into a lake. And Arthur happened to save her from that, by the way, so like they have that connection from the past. But Opal faces her fears of water and goes down into the Underland and finds the source of all of the monsters, because apparently the monsters rising up out of the Underland is not like a feature of the Underland. It is a feature of the fact that the ghost of the author lady is still down here. She's an angry ghost who wants to destroy the town because the town still has that rich family living in it that she was married into. And that's kind of where her money comes from. I think it's like her inheritance or whatever, and she just keeps up the Starling house with this endless supply of money from the 1800s or whatever. Old money. So she hates these people who own the town, and they're like evil coal mining people who used to own slaves and all of this, because we're in the South. Her rage that this town is basically still inhabited by these people just continues and continues, and she keeps putting out monsters to try and go kill these people, and the keepers of Starling House are there trying to prevent the monsters from destroying the town. Okay, but Opal has a whole like thing where she hugs it out with this person and is like, you don't need to do this anymore, because it turns out that Opal is actually a descendant of this rich family. She's actually one of them. Her mother fled from her rich family and became like a vagabond, and Opal and her brother had no idea. And so Opal's like, see, I'm a member of this family, but I've come like with olive branch of peace, like, you don't have to keep haunting this place, and also your books, by the way, are really, really popular. Like, the gal died before she found out that her books were popular, so she wrote these Underland books and then she died. And so a combination of hugging it out and telling this ghost that her books were popular, the ghost finally rests and the monsters become not hostile. Then she goes back to where she left Arthur fighting the monsters, and he's still fighting monsters, and she's like, "Hey Arthur, I solved it," and the monsters are no longer evil, and she hugs it out with him too, and then he starts being able to see that the monsters aren't evil. And yay, we saved the day. We saved it. The brother didn't come into the end of the story at all. I don't know. It was so messy. It was so, like, all of this potential was, like, right there for this book to be, like, cool. And it was so messy. And we had all of this time spent, like, researching the history of this town. And I didn't care. Like, what? Researching a town that I don't care about is not interesting to me. But we kept having to follow Opal as she very, very, very slowly pieces together what's happening. She's the world's most unenthusiastic detective. Meanwhile, there are monsters in this haunted house, and a boy is fighting them with the sword. He's not a boy, he's a whole man. He's, like, also almost 30. And I kept forgetting that because he also acts like a teenager and sounds like a teenager in his own head. Like, why wasn't this a young adult book? Why are these characters adults? I legitimately don't know. It had so many elements that I thought I was going to love, and then every time I thought I knew where the book was going, it flew off in a completely different direction. House not well enough utilized, the romance felt like nothing, the brother relationship felt built up and then didn't pay off. I was so done by the ending. I was like double speeding through the climax, like, okay, yep, I don't care because I know I'm not gonna get the cool climax that I was hoping for, and instead she just has to have a talk with the ghost. And so all is solved, and like there's so many elements of like wealth and race and all of this stuff like on the side that could have been explored but wasn't explored deeply enough. And it's just like, okay, well, I mean, can we talk about the fact that the person who discovered the Underland was apparently a black man, but the person who got all the credit for it was a white woman? Like, okay, we're not exploring that.
I really would have loved if Opal had been black and we had explored that more, but the story as is would need to change quite a bit for that to work, but I kind of wish that it had.
But like, there's just so many things that we could have explored. Seeming like it's gonna be deep and then being shallow is basically this book's entire MO, and it just left me feeling very, very disappointed. But I hope that this review was interesting for you. I've been doing these reviews to keep content coming out here on the channel while we wait for the next read along. So if you watched this, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. But now I will leave you all. I remind you that I have my own books that you can check out to see how I did with all of the things that may or may not disappoint you. And of course, you can find me on Patreon or channel membership to see videos not seen here on the regular channel. And if you're looking to hire a developmental editor, hello, I happen to be one of those. You can find me on Fiverr. All the links to everything are in the doobly-doo. Now I'm gonna go finish my lunch, and I will see all of you again next time for whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!
Just fear me, love me, do as I say, and I will be your slave.
Okay, so you could do what Jareth suggests, and I'd totally understand if you would, or you could just become a patron on my Patreon, just like all these lovely people, like Corey, Ashley, Bunna, Nemo, Tactical Hot Dog, Haley History Nerd, Stephanie, Rhea, Christina, Cameron, Lady Kragan, Jose, Lunar Muse, AJ, Marshy, Semi-Dark, GK, Scout, Annika, Jen, Gay Tutter, Tina, Laknuga, SB Boots, Martha Baggins, July, Bird Anonymous, Sarah, Kat, 78 Kilograms of Shade, Ingrid, Roma, Pansing Pony, Haley, Sam, Kira, Kohikaro, Mooney, Puttamancer, Kirsten, Bear, Jojo Bookish, Robin, Ursula, Caitlin, KJ, Mufflier, Celia, Alyssa, Deborah, Swamp Goblin Waifu, Sophia, Merween, Kit, Hidden Glade, Light Julie, Patrick, Anne Sophie, Callison, Vampire Antihero, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Rennie, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, and Amanda.
You have no power over me.